tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Uzalendo pia mshikamano viwe msingi wa umoja wetu, na tulinde uhuru na amani, mila zetu na desturi zetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Viwandani na hata mashambani, tufanye kazi sote kwa makini, tujitoe kwa hali na mali, tuijenge jumuiya bora. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the commencement of the NGOs Week 2021. My name is Andrew Ogombe. I work at the NGOs board as a Director of Operations and Compliance. I wish to take this opportunity to introduce our guests, and I'll mention their names and they'll stand for a second. And I'll start that from my extreme right. We have Mr. Jidraf Githendu, a Director of the board. Thank you. We have our Executive Director, Mr. Ntuman Kanata. Thank you, Mana Edi. We have Dr. Raphael Kinoti, Regional Director, Brook East Africa. Welcome. We have Madam Kate Maina-Voli, Country Director for Plan International. Welcome. We have Mr. Irungu Hafton, Executive Director, Amnesty International. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome you to this year's NGOs Week. This is an annual event that we hold at, every year. This year we have had to confine ourselves to virtual presentation of this whole process. And it will not be like the other years when we have had physical meetings. So the idea behind NGOs Week is basically to provide opportunities to share experiences in terms of best practices, challenges among various NGOs working in the country. We also get opportunity for other sectors of the economy to present opportunities that provide them with marketing of their various services and products. This, again, this year will not be very much possible in terms of physical presence, but what has been done is to do what you're going to go through in the course of the day. So to start us off, I'm going to invite the country director for Plan International, Madam Kate Maina Volley to give a brief presentation of her organization and what they do. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the NGO Week in 2021 as we discuss the role of NGOs' involvement in sustainable livelihoods. By way of background, as you heard from the previous presenter, I'm Kate Maina Volley, and I work for Plan International in Kenya. We've been working in Kenya since 1982, cutting across 20 counties, and most recently we are now very active in 10 counties. Our work has involved a lot of things, working to deliver development programs, but as well relief and rehabilitation programs across the counties that we've worked in the past. And our experience has really brought some very profound lessons in terms of the role that NGOs can play in ensuring sustainability in livelihoods. Our work has cut across from programming in the health sector, working in the education space, including ECCD, ensuring that our youth are linked into TVET as well, technical vocational education training, but also making sure we are also addressing the health needs of young people through sexual reproductive health rights. We've also worked in the child protection space, looking at gender-based violence, and really looking to be responsive to the needs as we see at the community level in terms of what we are seeing are the unique needs for each county. And one of the biggest lessons has been the need to always ensure that our interventions are grounded in sustainability. And so today we're talking about sustainability of livelihoods. You know, for an organization that has been here for many years, and indeed in many countries, we've really seen a change in the way we've been programming as Plan International. I believe this to be true for many NGOs. We were known to offer in the past a lot of direct support to communities based on the direct and visible needs that we saw at that time. We brought water close to the communities, we built schools and hospitals where there were none, we paid school fees for vulnerable children, and we distributed relief food. While this must have been the best way to deliver much needed support based on what we were seeing on the field at that time, I think NGOs have come to the realization that we need to adopt more sustainable approaches to empowering families and communities so that they themselves can take care of their own vulnerable. And in this case, as Plan, we talk about vulnerable children and adolescent girls in particular. As the sector has evolved, we've seen many NGOs adopt what we call rights-based approach, which is aimed at ensuring that we identify different actors along the value chain, and that we're working in partnership to deliver services in a way that is sustainable, and that we're complementing government efforts and the efforts of communities. And we're ensuring that there's accountability of the realization of the rights of children by all duty bearers. So moving away from direct service to delivery to partnerships, value chain, different actors playing their different roles. Even though NGOs continue to respond to direct needs of citizens during crisis and fragile situations, as should be the case, we want to make sure that we are not eroding the resilience of families. And so resilience building has become an integral part of what NGOs do. And there's more focus on building capacity of stakeholders, building capacity of the communities that we work in so that we can understand the underlying factors behind the fragile livelihoods and help communities come up with adaptive solutions. Kenya, as we know, is prone to meteorological disasters that put livelihoods at risk. And so as NGOs, we're helping governments, we're helping communities, both at the national and the county level, to develop policies for alternative livelihoods. In addition, NGOs have stepped in to support government and to support the national government to respond, as we saw, to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the NGO week. We're talking as NGOs working in Kenya. It's really important to note the critical role that NGOs play. We are playing a significant role in the development of rural livelihoods, and we are addressing what is often called the urban-rural dichotomy. Kenya is different than many countries is because we have a devolved government, and therefore resource allocation is there stemming from national and going down to county governments. And so perhaps one would say the dichotomy, urban-rural dichotomy, is not so glaring as one would see in other countries. But we as I said, we've evolved from direct support to really looking at sustainability. And what does sustainability mean for an NGO? It means continuing to perform and deliver project benefits to the primary target group that was intended, even after that project has ended, even after the funding has come to an end. So in other words, sustainability is to maintain and continue efforts after the funding is over. A livelihood is sustainable when it can cope and recover from the stresses and shocks and maintain or enhance its capabilities and assets both now and in the future. So as NGOs, we come to complement government efforts, and we have a unique offering with regard to livelihoods that complements what government is able to do. And I think the success behind the work that NGOs do in ensuring sustainability is that we have a direct involvement in projects and the activities that we're delivering them together with communities. We're able to do close monitoring underpinned by close key performance, very clear key performance indicators. We're able to evaluate projects on the ground, and we're able to adapt on the ground based on the situation and what the communities are telling us. So NGOs have a contact with the local population that is leading to better knowledge. We're able to bridge the gap between policy, research, and practice. We're able to bring a better understanding on local people's circumstances and what their needs are, and therefore we're able to adapt livelihoods accordingly. There are many examples of sustained livelihood programs on the ground that Plan International has been delivering, and I'm sure this is true for many other NGOs working in this space. That involvement that I spoke about with beneficiaries, for example, the income generation activities, what does that do? It increases ownership in terms of the interventions that we're doing together. We've seen ownership in fruit and vegetable farming. We've seen ownership in product and animal rearing, such as goats and chicken. We've also seen women and men coming together to really address cash flow issues and build resilience at the household level using village savings and loans associations. So that involvement with beneficiaries is something that is unique to NGOs, and we're able to complement what government is able to do. NGOs also play a very big role in terms of advocacy work. We've advocated and done a lot of advocacy and influencing to ensure that government is including economic safety nets in government budgets. So, for example, we have seen government funds that have been directed to women and youth groups, as well as linkages to economic safety nets with private sector for interest-free loans. So this is some of the things that NGOs are able to bring in this space when it comes to livelihood. We've also looked at legislation on suitable adaptation in climate change in policy. We've talked about capacity building of communities to understand alternative ways of farming and alternative ways for sustainable livelihoods. So, for example, when it comes to crops and animals, we look at what crops and what animals are resistant to climate change. And so being able to work at that grassroots enables us to adapt with communities right there on the spot. Partnerships is important for sustainable livelihoods. One of the things we have done as Plan International is, one among many, is we are implementing a project in Kwale with the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research, where we are replanting mangroves and adapting seaweed farming as an alternative source of livelihood. There is power in partnerships, and we have seen that. It allows us to adapt, it allows us to influence policy, it allows us to work with communities and grow that ownership so that the benefits accrue way beyond the length of a specific donor-funded program. And these alternatives are important because they reduce that over-dependency on climate-related livelihoods. For example, smart farming and reforestation. We've all seen the impact of climate in our own industry. We're very much a climate-sensitive country, from tourism, from our agriculture, from our horticulture, from our livestock. And so it's important that NGOs continue to play this very specific, targeted role in that space, influencing and working with communities to build their capacity to adapt sustainable livelihoods that will stand the test of time. So there's a lot to be said in terms of the role that NGOs play. We are very privileged to be able to work in this country as Plan International and to be able to be a meaningful partner for the government as we think through what does resilience look like, what does sustainability look like, so that we move from theory to practice. And the ability of NGOs to work at that community level allows us to practice some of the theories that we know and bring research alive in ways that allow our communities to adapt to the realities of climate change. In conclusion, I think I will say it's almost a moral obligation that we look at climate change and adaptive resilience and livelihoods so that we leave a better world and a better country for the next generations that follow. And this is a role that NGOs such as Plan International and others around the table and others working in this country are able to play, building that value chain and adaptive culture around sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Kate. What we have just heard from Plan International is part of what we are going to, is part of what is going to be in this NGOs Week process, and this is in terms of our sector annual report. We are going to have a presentation which will focus on our sector report for the year 2019 and 2020. So what you have heard is basically part of what NGOs do in this country, and also what will follow as part of these NGO Week activities is an availing of our NGOs directory for 2021. So with that, we can move to our next presentation, which will be done by Dr. Raphael Kinoti, Regional Director for Brook East Africa. Karibu, Dr. Kinoti.
Thank you so much, and I'll say good morning to viewers, and thank you so much to the NGO Coordination Board for really offering us this opportunity to come and just sit together and reflect on one or two things that NGOs actually do in this country. And Bwana CEO Mutuma, we are really thankful. I mean, this is really a great show of resilience, because then, you know, NGO Week, we used to really parading outside there and, you know, showcasing our things. But then it looks like even when we have these masks and things are all locked down, I mean, we can still do this. And so then, thank you so much to NGO Coordination Board. I want to make just a few remarks, just following up what Kate has said, because I think Kate has given a bigger overview of what actually NGOs do, Plan International in particular, but then the rest of the NGOs. But then I want to zero in on one or two small things that we do as Brook East Africa. Going back, I would say actually charity work is as old as humanity, but we are told that the term NGO really came into being in 1945 when the UN actually came to be, Article 71 of their charter that put in this. That's how the lingo NGO actually came to be. But then now, we are really occupying a critical sector, non-governmental, really supplementing what our mother, who is the government, is doing in various sectors. As Brook, of course, working in a good number of areas in the world, but now in particular the East Africa one, we are in 6 countries in the Horn of Africa. We're in Kenya, we're in Uganda, we're in Tanzania, we're in Somalia and Southern Sudan. And our major focus is animal welfare. Animal welfare really in general, but we tend to really focus mainly on the donkey in this area. And I know I've talked to a good number of people, and they ask me, why the donkey? Why on earth? Why should you? Why the donkey on earth? The donkey actually is an amazing animal. Probably just to begin it like that, then get into the gist of the matter. Did you know actually out of all the livestock that we have in the world, the donkey is the one that originally comes from Africa? The donkey was first domesticated in Africa, in the Sahel region. It's only in Africa actually that you find the donkey in the wild, you know, the wild ass, as they call it. So really the donkey is the true African animal. We don't celebrate it because of that. but then is our heritage really. We celebrate the animal because then of what it does in terms of sustainability of communities in the rural Africa. Let's take an example of Kenya. The case of Kenya is for a long time we've been having 1.8, 1.9 million of these animals. Today the numbers have gone down to around 1.2 million. You know what has been happening, the slaughter. And we thank the government really for biting the bullet last year and closing the slaughter because it had shown to be completely unsustainable. And so now we have 1.2 million of these animals around peri-urban, actually urban and rural parts of this country, and other countries in the Horn of Africa are really sustain livelihoods of communities. And so today, as we are talking of NGOs' involvement in the sustainability of livelihoods, then really when you get down to Turkana, for example, and ask a Turkana woman, how do you pull through one drought cycle, one famine cycle to another one? They will place the donkey in the middle of that. Because they will tell you, when I'm weak, I can't walk far, the donkey will get the water for me. Last week, but one, I was actually in Marakwet, and the women were exciting me by telling me how they send their donkeys to the market. And then they bring wares, women having to go there because they are marked. You know, we know this donkey belongs to this family, and it just comes to the market, and the woman has sent a message, and you place the maize or whatever other way, and the donkey delivers it back home. Faithful animals that have really sustained communities in terms of their resilience. A small little research we did last 2 years ago, actually, in Naivasha, showed us actually the young people you see in Naivasha delivering water and, you know, the other wares all around in Naivasha town. Each of them earns around 11,390 shillings every month from that one donkey that they own out there. So then, really, some animal that fuels or rather moves wheels, you know, down in the rural areas, down in, you know, these hard to reach areas. But for a long time, the animal was not celebrated. When the government did its planning, the animal was never really put in the planning. It's an animal that is very prone to tetanus, to rabies, and the rest of the diseases. It was never vaccinated. So we are raising awareness on that. But then secondly, we work with those communities that work with those animals in terms of those community livelihoods themselves. Like you know, most of the donkeys actually do a survey in this country. Almost 60% of them are used to deliver water. Kenya is a water scarce country. Go to Kambani, go to all these places. So we've done also projects around water a lot, just to support the donkey, but then to support those livelihoods of communities down there. Communities in Nyandarua, communities in Bomet will tell you that the donkey is very central in the milk sector, the dairy milk sector. They use it to deliver feed to the livestock, but then also they take milk and take it to the market. You go to Siongiroi, for example, in Bomet, early in the morning, you will find hundreds of them, you know, with jerry cans of milk that they are delivered actually to the buying center. And so then we've been working with those communities to see how do we drive this dairy sector actually. And one of the things that we've been doing in terms of really wanting to see sustainability now in the donkey-related sectors, like in dairy sector, we have been working with the health systems, livestock health systems. In this country, 80% of the work that's done in terms of livestock health is done by para-veterinary professionals, diploma holders, certificate holders. But then the government says each of those actually has to be attached to a veterinary surgeon. We've been working with the counties to ensure that that system is able to work out nicely and our communities get better delivery of that animal health service down to their local level. But then I'll talk of establishing sustainable community structures. Donkey owning communities sometimes can be very, very left alone or left behind. And so we've been sitting with them and establishing structures that actually help them to have a voice, not only about the donkey, but then also a voice really on the rest of their things that they do on a daily basis. And these structures have grown into really vibrant CBOs in some of these areas that are really been helping communities. Of course, another thing, and I think Kate alluded to that, is a favorable legal and policy framework. We have had challenges in this country in terms of the livestock sector, in terms of the policy structures that really support the whole of that system. And you know, Kenya is 70% ASAL, meaning really livelihoods of communities there really depend on livestock. And we are happy really that we have now a very upcoming bill, you know, in terms of the livestock that helps us really to organize the systems there in terms of the livestock health and production systems and all that really help to get the farmer to get a little bit more, but then also help to take care of the animal itself. And so, friends, even as I bring this to a close, just to say that COVID has made us really to want to look at things differently. We're looking at how do we deliver all this despite the COVID. A man called Patrick Geddes, that Scottish planner, conservationist, said in 1915 that you to think globally and act locally. I think this is where we are as NGOs today. We have to think globally, because then today we are in an interconnected world economy. You go to a rural part of this country and a lady will tell you, you know, I haven't given my cow, you know, this drug because, you know, the imports are not coming. So some world economy affecting even the smallest of our persons down in the rural areas, the interconnectedness of this. If COVID came 20, 30, 50 years ago, probably things would have been different. Things were a bit disjointed and things would work. But today, what happens in Europe, what happens in Asia, really affects our small farmer down there. And so we have to think globally, but then we have to act locally in terms of safeguarding livelihoods of our people down at the community level. And I think this is one of the major factors of NGOs, the major works of NGO in terms of helping our communities really to know how they are able to work amidst that. So I think I'll end it there and say thank you so much. Again, thank you to the NGO Coordination Board for really getting us this opportunity to do this. Asante sana.
Thank you, Dr. Kinoti. And you will all agree with me that the role of the donkey has been very well articulated in our subsistence economy. And it's also gratifying to note that we have formal and even international kind of organizations that are there to cater for the welfare of specifically the donkey. This is quite a remarkable activity, and we wish to see more of these activities in our subsistence economy. Ladies and gentlemen, to take you to the next level of our presentation, we are going to give an opportunity to Mr. Houghton Irungu to give us some insights into our legislation that governs this sector. Kenya is one of the few countries in Southern and Eastern Africa with independent departments that govern this key sector. And so we have a legislation that has been there from 1992. And what Mr. Irungu is going to look at are the lessons that we have learned since this legislation came into being in 1992. And it will be a good opportunity to look at what we need in terms of going forward, where we have had challenges and weaknesses. And with those few remarks, I take this opportunity to avail Mr. Houghton Irungu to take us through lessons learned from the implementation of the NGO's Act of 1992. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Ongo.
Thank you very much, and good morning once again to my fellow directors, the NGO Coordination Board, the NGO Coordination Bureau. It is such a pleasure for Amnesty International Kenya to be here this morning alongside Brooke and Plan, and I think the diversity is also great in the sense you have integrated development, you have also agriculture and livestock, and you have human rights as well. There's no way that we can have this conversation without having a sense of historical significance. It's 3 decades since the NGO Coordination Act of 1991 was passed, and I feel a little bit moved. And you know, I wanted to start really by just honoring a number of the leaders that I remember from that period in 1991. You know, 30 years ago, there was a young man of 25 years who was actually sitting in a boardroom like this, and I was then an NGO board member. So I represented the organization FEMNET, the African Women's Development and Communications Network. And alongside were people like Ezra Bugori of World Neighbors, Elkanah Odembo, Felista Onyango, Dr. Felista Onyango, who was into, at that time, protecting child rights, Jam Karanja, who was then focused on people with disabilities, the late Alois Opio, who passed away from COVID-related ailments earlier last week, but also people like John Batten, who then was running ActionAid, and Karen Twining. So there was a whole host of people. Some of them are now ancestors. They are no longer with us. Others are cabinet secretaries, like the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Some of them are governors, like Professor Kibwana. And there are others who are now just farmers. And I think what we have to recognize is that this is a sector that has at least 2 generations of leadership in it. And I think the main theme we have to acknowledge for today is the theme of resilience. The sector is still here, and it is still making a massive impact on the development, the governance, and the human rights of this country. Allow me just to talk about 3 big moments, I think, of the NGO Coordination Act. The first was really the 1990s. It's kind of bizarre now to think that civic education, poverty eradication, and women's rights was actually very scary back in 1991. If you were doing those things, you were in some ways considered to be enemy of the state. Clarion, the organization run by Professor Kibudha Kibwana, was shut down. Special branch officers would be sitting outside the office of the Greenbelt movement. Many times, Professor Wangari Maathai, of course now, who became a Nobel laureate, but for most of her life, she was a hunted woman. She was a hunted woman. And the special branch would come to her house, they would come to her office, and in many ways, her life was not comfortable. So that was really the 1990s, the period of the ethnic clashes and ethnic cleansing, the period of the constitution, the call for the new constitution. In those days, the constitution, and I remember this, I was working with ActionAid, and I asked my director at that point, I was about 27 years of age, and I said to the director, we have to support Wangari, Professor Maathai, to support university students to discuss the constitution that they would like. And he said, you can do this, but on the condition that you mark all the files related to this project and the grant that we were going to give, which I think was about 1 million shillings. At that time, a lot of money. But you must mark it personal, so that if the special branch comes and they arrest you, but they don't arrest the organization. We will continue to give you a salary, we will find lawyers for you, and we will give you full backing. And that's what it was like in the 1990s, right? So this was a difficult time for us. You know, if in the 1990s, if you called for universal health coverage, if you called for universal education, primary education, it would sound a bit like you're a communist. Those were the days that we were, you know, that's the beginning of the NGO sector, right? And now, of course, those 2 things are government policy, right? But as far as I checked, Jubilee is not a communist party. Then you had the period really of the 2000s, and this was an interesting period. The 2012 is an epic, iconic date because that's when the Public Benefits Organizations Act was passed. And it was preceded by 10 years of consultation between government and NGOs, and it was passed on that date. And we had great hopes for the sector. We had great hopes for the sector at that time. It was a new multi-party law. If you remember, the 1991 NGO Coordination Act was a one-party act. And we hoped that in line with the Constitution, we would see a new dispensation for the sector. Unfortunately, between 2014 and 2017, we saw no less than 5 legislative amendments to essentially try and frustrate the sector. We saw the most important one, I think, was the attempt to cap the funding to NGOs to 15%. And what it was an attempt to do was to try and deprive a sector then of about 8,200 organizations of about 85% of its funding. Fortunately, all 5 of those amendments were defeated in Parliament, and the sector and, of course, the 80 billion shilling worth of a sector survived to some extent. But I think we missed an opportunity, both as government and as NGOs. The first opportunity would have been to start looking for alternative financing, because I think as soon as we announced that Kenya was going to be a lower middle income country, donors began to move away from Kenya, and they began to look to places that were least developing. And as a result, the funding for the NGO sector began to dry up. And essentially what we are suffering now is the failure to put in place an alternative financing strategy that could have had even government essentially support NGOs to be able to do the kind of work that Plan, Brook and others do. And I think this was one misstep, and hopefully in the future we can revisit this a little bit. Fortunately, in 2018, we got new leadership in the NGO Coordination Board and the Bureau, and that leadership took us from a position really of I think repression to really a rapprochement, an agreement that there could be policy dialogue, there could be agreement between the sector and the government. They are not enemies, and actually they are complementary, I think, as Dr. Kinoti has said. And it's really the leadership, I think, of the board, and it's good to have Director Gidendu here, the previous chairperson, and also Director Kanata, who has really begun to open up the doors much more in the last couple of years. I think it's important to say that there's some unfinished business. The PBO Act still remains unimplemented, and we're now into the 9th year since it was enacted, and next year will be the 10th. It will be the decade since the PBO was enacted, and therefore we can, I think, as a sector, continue to call on the Ministry of Interior to fulfill on their promise, I think 2 years ago, that this act would be implemented. And I think the other thing that I would say, completely independent of the NGO Coordination Board, is that the board does require appointments at this point. It's not operating on full strength, and therefore replacing Chairperson Gishira Kabara would be an important way of giving the leadership to the sector, but also to the government to be able to continue this work. Let me end with just 1 or 2 other points. In 2019, we learned that the sector was worth 160 billion shillings to the Kenyan economy. We heard that it employs roughly about 110,000 people across the country. It is operational in 47 counties, and it is in those places where the need is greatest. It is in places where there is no health services, there is no education, there is no protection for women and girls who suffer from gender-based violence. And I think as we lean into this prolonged COVID period, and particularly the third wave, I think the focus of the sector has to be on really ensuring that we reduce or eliminate levels of corruption, levels of impunity. We make sure that everybody has access to this new vaccine that is keeping us safe, hopefully, from COVID-19, and making sure that it is the ones who really need it most that get it, not just simply the ones who have power and privilege to be able to buy it, but essentially that the COVID vaccine remains free, it remains accessible, and it is prioritized primarily for the frontline, our health workers, our police officers and security officers, and our elderly. And that for those of us, including that young man of 25 who now sits before you, who has not yet reached the age of 58, that he can wait his turn and not jump the queue. So on that note, I just want to say thank you very much once again. It is a historic moment. 30 years is not a short period to acknowledge. And just to end with really just honoring the leadership of the NGO sector over these 30 years for the service that they have done, for the voice they have created, and for the courage and the conviction to serve this beloved republic of ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton for those very timely remarks. Policy formulation by this board is a key aspect of our mandate, and I'm sure the remarks that have been made on this area of policy formulation are very timely to what you'd like to do going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to move to the next level of our business this morning, or this afternoon rather. And we are going now to look at the annual sector report for the year 2019-2020. And this will give us an opportunity to reflect on what has transpired from last year, when we had an annual contribution of about 160 billion. We are going to be able to see what we have in the immediate past year. So to help us move forward on this, I'll get a colleague of mine to take us through this particular phase of the function.
My elders. Why would you call it non-anything?
None, yeah.
What are you?
Actually, it just has sort of a negative, yes, a strange phrasing.
We need to have a few people.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families,
until everyone can speak out for human rights, until everyone will work together against poverty, until all children are able to make their dreams come true. We, good neighbors, will be with them, leaving no one behind.
HelpAge International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. HelpAge International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70 Plus cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck, calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.
Is the presentation of our annual sector report for the year 2019-20, and this will be presented by one of our colleagues, Madam Zilpah Angwenyi. Angwenyi, welcome, please.
Thank you. My name is Zilpah Angwenyi. I'm Head of Research and Policy, and I'm going to take you through the annual NGO sector report for 2019-2020. The outline of this report has a background, the sector growth and contribution to development, funding and the NGO sector sustainability, and conclusions and recommendations. The background of this report: the NGO Coordination Act of 1990 mandates the NGOs board to receive, analyze, and evaluate the annual reports of NGOs. Secondly, to advise the government on the activities of NGOs and their role in national development. And thirdly, to advise NGOs to harmonize their activities to the National Development Plan, like the Vision 2030, SDGs, and the Big Four agenda. The board develops, publishes, and disseminates the annual NGO sector report, which is in line to Article 35 of the Constitution of Kenya, the Access to Information Act, and the NGOs Coordination Act. The sources of data. We used various tools to collect the data that we used to analyze this report. One of them was the annual return form called Form 14. In this form, the NGOs fill the projects they've implemented, the sectors of intervention, the target population, the amount they've spent, from which sources, and the employees they are working with. There is also audited accounts that they submit, but this one is applicable to those NGOs who receive more than 1 million. Should be account on the COVID-19. inquiries. NGO sector growth and contribution to development. Relatively registered over 11,000. 362 NGOs were registered, of which 297 of them were national. Period of 2011 to 2019-2020. In 2010-2011, we had over 1,000 NGOs that were registered with them. We had, in 2012-2013, there were over 9,262, and the we had 600. Funds received in the year 2010-2011, the NGOs had received over 85.9 billion. There was a sharp rise up to, there was a sharp rise up to 2014-2015 when NGOs received a total of 142.6 billion. Then there was a fall between 2015-2016, then a sharp rise from 2017-18 to 2018-2019 at 165.9. And the year under review, there was a fall again to 158.7. This could be attributed to the COVID pandemic presently being experienced in the globe. Total funds received in the year 2019-2020. The first column gives the sources of where their money were received from in terms of countries, amount in billions, in Kenya shillings, the second column, and the percentage distribution. Over 136.6 billion was received from other countries, which was representing 86%. 21.2 billion was generated by NGOs locally within Kenya, which was representing 13%. And 0.93 billion, was received by NGOs, but they didn't disclose from which country of origin, and this represented 1%. Funds received versus source type. The first column talks about the fund source type. The second one is amount in billions in Kenya shillings, and the third one is percentage distribution. The first fund source type was foreign government agency, which was at 46 billion and at 28.9%. Foreign government agencies, these are agencies that are owned by other government entities, that by other countries, like USAID, there is Danida, and there is UKAID. Affiliate NGOs, these are NGOs that support a headquarters elsewhere, but they support their organization in Kenya. They were at 45.5 billion, representing 28.6 billion. NGOs, CBOs, foundation and trusts put together, they were 32.1 billion, representing 20%. United Nations agencies, these are agencies that are affiliated to the United Nations, were 12.1 billion at 8%. Self-generated income was at 7.4 billion and at 5%. This is income that NGOs were able to generate and plow the profit back into sustaining the organizations. Then there were individual donors who contributed 5.5 billion, and it was representing 3%. Affiliated FBOs, these are faith-based organizations that are affiliated to some NGOs. They contributed a total amounting to 3.3 billion and at 2%. All the way up to the Agency of Kenya Government. These are agencies that are affiliated to the Kenyan government that contributed a total of 0.732 billion, representing 0.04%. Utilization of funds on projects. The NGOs during the year spent 97.8 billion Kenya shillings, of which 66.6 billion was spent in implementing projects within Kenya, while the remainder of that 1.3 billion was used in implementing projects in other countries. There are those countries that have projects in other countries, they are like the regional NGOs. They work in the region, but due to the insecurities in the country, they're working like Somalia and Sudan, they spent over 31 billion. Funds utilized in Kenya per sector. The health sector took lead at 21 billion, children at 8.5 billion, the education sector at 7.1 billion, there was relief / disaster management at 5.3 billion, agriculture 3.4 billion, governance 1.7 billion, all the way up to the last one was drug and alcohol addiction at 0.002 billion. Counties of operation for NGOs with projects for the year 2019-2020. These are counties where the NGOs implemented projects. The NGOs that submitted returns within this year implemented projects, and majority of them implemented projects in Nairobi County, where we had 221 projects being implemented in Nairobi, which was representing 12%. Kisumu at 94 projects, which was representing 5%. Kiambu at 89 projects, representing 5%. Turkana at 52 projects, representing 3%, Kakamega at 51 projects, representing 3%, all the way up to Nandi and Kericho. Nandi was second last at 10 projects, which was representing 1%. Kericho had 7 projects, which was representing also 1%. Number of employees engaged during the period. In the year 2019-2020, NGOs engaged 39,852 Kenyan staff, over 2,000 expatriate staff, 37,283 Kenyan volunteers, and 814 foreign volunteers. In total, the NGO sector engaged over 80,000 employees during the year under review. Contribution to the Big Four agenda. NGOs spent 25 billion Kenya shillings in implementing projects that are related to the Big Four agenda. 21 billion went to the universal health care pillar, 3.7 billion to the food security and nutrition pillar, over 129 million was spent on manufacturing pillar, and 183 million was spent on the housing and settlement pillar. COVID-19, the role of NGOs in combating COVID-19. An assessment survey was done by the board, and a sample of 100 NGOs responded. On the fundraising or revenue aspect, how the COVID-19 or COVID pandemic had affected it, we had 59% of the NGOs reporting to have experienced a significant decrease. 29% of those sampled reported to have experienced a somewhat a decrease. 66% experienced a somewhat increase. 5% stated that did not experience any experience over this period, while 1% had experienced a significant increase on its revenue. On staff welfare, 51% of the NGOs sampled stated that they had downsized their workforce due to the pandemic. 58% stated that they retained staff with reduced salaries and benefits, while 43% of the organizations said that they embraced software and technology. Contingency plan, 61% of the organizations sampled said that they had a contingency plan in place, and that is how they responded to the fighting in COVID-19 pandemic. There is the form of support they offered, the amount they spent in Kenya shillings, the approximate population that they reached, and distribution in percentage on the amount they spent. One form of their contribution was relief of food and economic support. They spent over 98 million. They reached about over 470,000 people, representing 49%. On water and sanitation, over 64 million was spent. Approximate population reached was 1.1 million, representing 32%. On donating of PPEs, that is protective equipment, over 24 million was spent. Over 458 population was reached, representing 12%. Provision of healthcare, over 13 million was spent, reaching over 382 people at 7%. In total, over 201 million was spent, over 2.4 million people were reached, and that is the percentage. Then the NGO sector sustainability. NGO sector sustainability, we are looking at how an NGO is able to sustain itself over time and be able to fulfill its mission to its stakeholders or beneficiaries, and this should be a long-run thing. So as a board, we adopted the USAID sector CSO Sustainability Index methodology. During the year, 2816 NGOs submitted returns, and this was our target population. However, we took a sample of 339 organizations at 95% confidence level to get the following statistics. Our index was based on 3 interrelated dimensions. One of the dimensions was organizational capacity, the second one was financial viability, and the third one was collaboration and networking. And organizational capacity, we were looking at NGOs governance. Have they separated their board and management and other issues that deal with governance of an NGO? We were looking at the NGO staffing, if they have a huge staff turnover, if they're training their staff, chances would be that they will be sustaining themselves in the future. ICT capacity, that is another aspect that we looked at that. Then financial viability, we were looking at the diversity of income sources. We were looking at the local support. We were looking at self-generated income, and we were also looking at ownership of non-current assets. On the dimension of collaboration and networking, we were looking at the existence of information exchange, access to technical support, and access to equipment support. The overall sustainability index for the period of 2019-2020 financial year was at 52%. Collaboration and networking was at 30%. Financial viability was at 35%, and then the organizational capacity was at 71%. This implies that the overall sustainability index for the NGO sector at 52% implies that our sector is within the sustainability evolving stage. There are 3 clusters of sustainability. There is sustainability enhanced, which runs from 70% to 100. There is sustainability evolving stage, which runs from 40 to 69%, and then sustainability embedded, which runs from 0 to 39%. And hence, we fall within the sustainability evolving stage as the NGO sector in Kenya. In conclusion, the report demonstrates that the NGO sector continues to grow greatly. The number has gone up from 100 NGOs in 1992 to 11,624 NGOs in the year under review. 362 new applications or new registrations were also done within the year. NGOs received a total of Kenya shillings 158.7 billion from various donors during the year. They spent 24.9 billion in implementing projects related to the Big Four areas, and about 100 NGOs contributed towards fighting COVID-19 pandemic. In conclusion, the sector continues to be at the sustainability evolving stage. Recommendations. The board should conduct a census to ascertain the number of active NGOs. The board should also enhance the monitoring of NGO activities to promote transparency and accountabilities by having adequate staff and financial resources so as to realize the monitoring aspect. The board needs an automated system that will assist it in the monitoring. The board also needs to expand its service decentralization by opening more regional offices, because if the board has more regional offices, they will be closer to the NGOs, and monitoring of the activities of those NGOs will be easier as opposed to operating from regions that are big or broad. The board needs to strengthen its enforcement function. The board also needs a policy framework that will guide the new entrants and the donor fraternity on the need at their ground to avoid duplication. The board should build the capacity of the NGOs in resource mobilization by engaging the stakeholders in coming up with innovative ways that would see the sector become self-reliant. The board should encourage the NGOs to practice the 70 to 30% best practice in resource mobilization. Here, NGOs are encouraged to practice this global best practice whereby they are supposed to spend 70% of their total amounts received on projects, while the remainder of 30% should go to administration. The board should promote local philanthropy for the NGOs to fundraise internally and reduce overdependence on external funding. Thank you, and I appreciate your keen listening.
Thank you, Madam Zilpa, for that concise presentation. One thing that we may need to briefly comment on is that what has been presented in terms of the report is basically what is collected under our jurisdiction of the NGOs Act. And it is good also to notice that we have diverse registration criteria, and it means that we have other NGOs.
Until everyone can speak out for human rights. Until everyone will work together against poverty. Until all children are able to make their dreams come true. We, good neighbors, will be with them, leaving no one behind.
Helpage International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. Helpage International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70 Plus cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
Thank you very much, Andrew. The board members who are participating in this event, and those who are watching TV47, those who are following us on our Facebook page, on our website, those who are participating in our webinar, NGO officials and our stakeholders, wherever they are, how protocols are observed. It's a great afternoon for us as we launch the NGO Week and our annual sector report and the NGO directory. It gives us great pleasure in this virtual launch of the NGO Week 2021, and it is the third time we are launching the annual report that contains comprehensive information on the NGO sector, including projects, funding, and employment. We are also launching the NGO directory that contains contact information for the NGOs and corporate partners that have taken advertising space. The NGO Week
is an annual event in which we provide a platform for the NGO sector and the stakeholders to showcase what they do to the public, share experiences and best practices. This year NGOs Week does not involve physical exhibitions as it has been the norm. It has been organized against a backdrop of challenges posed by COVID-19, which has led to loss of employment and livelihood across the globe, reduced funding to the NGO sector, and significant challenge to government in terms of meeting its obligations to the population. NGOs have played a critical role at the grassroots level to complement government efforts in the fight against the pandemic. They have provided selfless, voluntary, and non-discriminatory service in supporting the war against the pandemic. Many NGOs have supported health systems to effectively fight the war. Others have provided pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical support, while others trained community health workers. NGOs did a lot to provide support in the community, especially among the vulnerable and the poor. And it is for this reason that we have adopted this year's theme, NGOs' involvement in the sustainability of livelihoods. The live event is hosted virtually in line with the COVID-19 measures and protocols provided by the government, and we are grateful that our media partner, TV47, is amplifying our voice today. The NGO Week 2021 aims at providing an opportunity for the NGO sector players to showcase their activities, share experiences, and network with other development stakeholders and the public, improving CSO government relations, and providing a platform for sharing experiences on the fight against COVID-19. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the week aims at highlighting the achievements of the NGO as a sector worth funding and to demonstrate their contribution to national economy. In this front, the NGO sector continues to be a key player in our country's economic development. For example, according to the report we are launching today, a total of 2,816 NGOs received a total of 158.7 billion to implement projects in the financial year 2019-2020. The same NGOs indicated in their annual reports that they had a total of 8,299 employees in the period under review. This is a great contribution to the Kenyan economy. The report also details the contribution of the NGO sector, especially with regard to the Big Four government agenda. Their contribution is impressive, and I urge all of you to read the report. We shall translate the recommendation of this report into practical policies that will enhance the role of the NGO sector in the development of our country. The report documents the key challenges that the sector faces, key of which is diminishing funding. The board is working with the stakeholders on a program of structured engagement between the NGOs and the private sector aimed at supporting the programs of the charities. This is why we are having webinars involving the NGOs and the private sector from tomorrow up to Friday, April 16, 2021. We have a huge number of more than 11,000 registered NGOs who will take part in these webinars. Apart from that, we are also undertaking regional activities across the country. We have activities in Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, and Garissa, whereby organizations that are based there and in support with our regional office, we are also undertaking various activities. May I inform you that the board has started automating its service delivery process with a view of improving efficiency, and we are hopeful that we shall launch the program this year. Once the automation process is complete, all the active NGOs should find it easier to file their reports. This means we shall be in a better position to quantify the contribution of the sector to our country's overall economy. As I conclude, may I thank the Board of Directors for the support it has given my team in organizing this event, our partners for the support, and the support to the staff for working tirelessly in ensuring that this event takes place. I wish to thank you all, and God bless. Before I leave this space, I want to welcome board member, Director Jidraf Kivedu, who is seated on my left to give some few remarks on behalf of the Board of Directors. Director Kivedu, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Executive Director Mutuma Kanata, for even the insight that you have given regarding the activities that the NGO board is undertaking, both to regulate and to strengthen the NGO sector. Fellow board members, Executive Director, NGO Coordination Board, NGO officials present and following through our various fora, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this launch of NGOs Week of this year 2021, the annual sector report 2019-2020, and the NGOs Directory 2021. This is the third annual NGO sector report that presents the state of the NGO sector to be launched. This launch marks the start of NGOs Week 2021. Traditionally, this event has been physical, but this year it is different. We had to do the launch virtually in strict compliance with the COVID-19 protocols issued by the government. The board is mandated to advise the government on the contribution of NGOs to national development, as well as providing policy guidelines to NGOs to align their programs and projects to Kenya national development priorities. It is for this reason that the NGO publishes and disseminates the NGO sector reports on an annual basis. We should share this information on the state of the sector in the country. And ladies and gentlemen, this report provides comprehensive statistical information that is important for national planning. Indeed, timely and accurate data provides backbone of evidence-based public policy, which helps bring about meaningful reforms and policy improvements that in turn facilitate performance-based management. Hence, this annual NGO sector report is a policy tool that provides fact-based insight useful for planning. In addition, the report we are launching today will be an invaluable input for policy and decision-making at all levels. This report confirms the increasingly important role that the NGOs play in complementing the government as well as improving livelihoods. This demonstrates that NGOs are offering a wide range of goods and services in almost all parts of the country and making a difference in the lives of vulnerable and disadvantaged populations. Ladies and gentlemen, the report also establishes some of the challenges NGOs face, potentially inhibiting their ability to effectively serve the needy. For instance, the report portrays that many NGOs in Kenya depend on foreign donor funding. It is important that the NGOs start income-generating activities to support their activities, and especially at this time of the economic challenges posed by the COVID-19. The NGO sector in Kenya has grown tremendously since the enactment of the NGOs Coordination Act. Cumulatively, more than 12,000 NGOs have been registered since the inception of the board. NGOs are making immense contribution to national development, with the charities spending billions of shillings to transform lives. I'm happy that NGOs are complementing government development efforts, especially in the big four priority areas of the government. It is important to note that NGOs rely on funding from external sources. It is for this reason that the board has organized webinars aimed at providing a platform for constructive engagement with the private sector as a sustainable resource mobilization path. The discussions are part of NGO Week 2021. We would like to see more funding from local philanthropists and corporate sectors supporting our NGO sector. Additionally, we are concerned that active NGOs are not filing their annual returns. As per the law, the board will institute measures to improve compliance, including automation of its services, which is an ongoing process. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the NGO sector, for the NGO sector to serve wananchi better, efficient and effective government service is required. The NGOs Coordination Board Strategic Plan 2020 to 2022, launched last year, is anchored on 6 priority areas aimed at strengthening the core activities of the board, as well as investing in strategic areas that will make it achieve its new vision of having a vibrant, efficient, effective, and sustainable PBO sector. I am happy to note that the board is on course with regard to this automation agenda. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank my colleagues, board members, for providing leadership and resources in the development of the report and the directory. I wish to also thank our partners for supporting a number of our programs and activities, including the NGOs Week of this year 2021 and the development of the sector report and the directorate. Thank you, and may God bless you.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
Until everyone can speak out for human rights. Until everyone will work together against poverty. Until all children are able to make their dreams come true. We, good neighbors, will be with them, leaving no one behind.
Helpage International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. Helpage International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70+ cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck, calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
Until everyone can speak out for human rights. Until everyone will work together against poverty. Until all children are able to make their dreams come true. We, good neighbors, will be with them, leaving no one behind.
Help With International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. Help With International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70+ cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck, calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
So we go to the most awaited part, so we get to unveil our sector report. And I would wish to welcome our CEO, Mr. Mutuman Kanata, together with our two board members, Madam Dr. Njoki and Mr. Jidraf Gidendu, so that he can help us unveil the sector report 2019-2020 and also unveil the directory. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome, Pete, Maina, Plan International. We are going to cut the ribbon. I don't know how we are going to hold, but
so wow, that's
how
our.
Can we do it joint? It's a joint cutting of the ribbon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you very much. There we go. That's our sector report for 2019-2020. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's have some beautiful ladies to help us unveil it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wow, that's our sector report 2019-2020.
Wow.
So we are glad that we have it. So we have the directory, which is our new launcher. We'll have the names and the addresses of the NGOs that we have registered, which is something we have put in action this year, and we'll continue updating it. We also have our sector report that incorporates our year of 2019-2020. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So as we all right. So while at it, we'd like to welcome our partners who have been with us. Some of our major partners who made it today. We're so grateful. Dr. Kinoti, from Amnesty International, Dr. Kinoti from Dr. Kinoti from Brook East Africa, and then Kate from Plan International. So we were able to do a short photo session. So I'd kindly request our ED and our two board members to take a photo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll ask the ED to remain, so we can ask Madam Kate. Thank you, Madam Kate, for being our major partner with us, and thank you for finding time to come over with us. Thank you very much. All right, so I'll ask Dr. Kinoti to kindly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for always finding time and coming to these events and being one of our panelists. Thank you very much. And I'll ask Mr. Irongo Horton from Amnesty International. Asante sana for finding time to be one of our panelists. I'll request for a group photo. We'll try to observe so thank you. So we can have probably a photo, just as one of them, as we do the vote of thanks. Yeah, just observe COVID protocols. It's a kind.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to take you back to our MC of the day, our Deputy Director, to take us through it with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Joy. We are now approaching the end of our dinner today, and we're going to give this opportunity to our board member, Dr. Njoki Ndiba, to give a vote of thanks. Karibu, Dr. Njoki.
As well as our organizing partners for organizing this event, and our ED, Mr. Mutuman Kanata. I take this opportunity to thank our partners for supporting the NGOs Week 2021 report and directory, the media partners for covering this event, TV47 for covering this event. You've done a great job. All participants for taking part in this launch, and all those who have actively or passively played a role to make this launch a success. Thank you, and congratulations to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's the end of our today's launch and promo session. So thank you very much, TV47. Thank you, those who have been following our event. We are very grateful. Asanteni sana.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.
Helpage International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. Helpage International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70 Plus cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
Until everyone can speak out for human rights. Until everyone will work together against poverty. Until all children are able to make their dreams come true. We, good neighbors, will be with them, leaving no one behind.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls' and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.
Help With International Secretariat brings together like-minded organizations to collaborate and strengthen national, regional, and global influence on issues of older persons' rights. Our focus is on the rights, well-being, and dignity of older persons so that they can live a life that is free from discrimination and poverty. Help With International has offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique. And in Kenya, we work closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with several network members, including Karika, Kibera Daycare Center for the Elderly, District Pastoralist Association, and the Kenya Society for People with AIDS. We have worked with the government to introduce universal pension for older people, and we're proud of the impact that the Inua Jamii 70 Plus cash transfer program continues to have in our community in Kenya. Thank you.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
In 1937, at the height of the Spanish Civil War, British journalist John Langdon Davis came across a child with a note hung around his neck, calling on whoever finds a boy to take care of him. The war correspondent answered the call, and with that, Plan International was born. Today, the organization has roots in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, covering 75 countries. Within the Middle East, East and South African region, Plan International has operations in 15 countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mozambique, and Kenya. Plan International has been operating in Kenya since 1982, responding to emergency and relief programs as well as long-term development work. We have transformed the lives of millions of children, adolescents, and youth through our projects in education, water, sanitation and health, resilience building, disaster and risk reduction, and child protection. With close to 40 years of working experience in Kenya, we are unapologetic about advancing girls' rights. We recognize the barriers that still stand in the way of realizing the rights of adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, such as gender-based violence, vulnerability to commercial exploitation, and other harmful practices such as FGM, early and forced marriages. We employ gender transformative approaches that seek to tackle the root causes of gender inequality within the society. We work towards reshaping unequal gender and power relations so as to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality. We work with like-minded allies towards enabling policies, budgetary and institutional frameworks that advance gender equality and adequately protect girls and young women's rights. Together, we take action so that 100 million girls can learn, lead, decide, and thrive.